Hey everybody, it's me, Zach. This is my dog, Potato, and welcome back to our channel. Hey everybody, it's me, Zach, and today we're trying something new. In the spirit of trying new things, a lot of people had heard me talk about in previous videos that I was going through and watching season 4's Love is Blind, and people are like, oh my god, Zach, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Love is Blind. There's a new season coming out. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And I know that's probably not everybody, because probably not all of y'all watch it. It is a very different thing from the content that I normally post over here and talk about over here, but not too different, because it is like reality TV. It is people being messy, and it is fascinating to me as somebody who can't necessarily relate to what the people on the show are going through. So what I will say is, if you're brand new to the concept of Love is Blind, I'll give a quick preface, overview of how it works. And if you're not new to that, I'll leave some timestamps so you can skip around to what we're going to talk about. Because my goal is to talk about episodes 1 through 5 of season 6 of Love is Blind. It's very difficult to talk about shows like this where they drop a whole bunch of episodes all at once, because 1, I gotta be able to find time to watch all of them. 2, I gotta figure out a good time to post, because some people do binge watch all 6 episodes of a show that get dropped at once, and other people take their time and work through it slowly. So I'm specifically going to cover the first 5 episodes where they were primarily just in the pods, although episode 5 has a little bit of stuff with the trip to the Dominican Republic once they have coupled up and whatever. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so if you've never seen the show Love is Blind, it is a Netflix reality dating show. And the concept is that you don't see the person you're dating, okay? It's like a literal blind date, all right? They have the men on one side, the women on another side. And let me say, I don't know if you can tell from the Cats the Musical t-shirt I'm wearing, but I am homosexual, okay? I am not straight in the slightest bit, all right? I'm a queer person, loud and proud. And so sometimes I like to immerse myself in straight culture, and this is straight culture, okay? Love is Blind is peak straight culture. So anyways, the concept is men on one side, women on the other side, and then they go into these pods and they talk to a person that they can't see. And it's supposed to get really down to the core of what relationships are supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about personality, your interests, your goals, what you want out of life. That's what they're trying to get at. They're trying to say, hey, we don't care what you look like. I want to know who you are in your soul. And so these men and women, they date each other over the course of a week. And by the end of that week, they have to decide if they want to propose to somebody and get engaged to be married. And then after that, they go on a little vacation. This season, they're in the Dominican Republic at a lovely resort. And then after that, they go back to living together in a home in whatever city they're based out of for the season. I think this one is in one of the Carolinas. I haven't gotten that far yet, but I think that's what I had read or saw or heard. And then they got 3 weeks or something like that together. And then at the end of that 3 weeks, they have to actually get married on the TV show. Well, I mean, they don't have to. They can say they don't want to get married, but that's what they're all working towards, is this very quick marriage based on meeting somebody 3 weeks ago in a pod where they couldn't see the other person. Does that make sense to everybody? Such a simple concept, huh? such a fun, simple concept that I can't relate to. Although, I guess, I probably at some point in my life, took some risks on a guy I met on a dating app somewhere. And I will say, I am in a very committed relationship. I have been together with my partner for many, many years at this point. We did meet on the old Tinder. The Tinderella. We swiped until we found each other. So, I can speak to some aspects of relationships and stuff like that, but I'm not a relationship expert, and I'm Also not straight. And I do think a lot of times queer people, go about relationships a little bit different than straight people. Because, like, my partner and I have no plans to ever get married, right? Like, that's just not something we aspire to. So, these people are in a much different place than where my partner and I are at. And that's also not to say that all queer people obviously approach relationships like I do. I'm just saying, like, I'm not in the same realm of thinking as some of these people. So anyways, I thought what we could do is go through each of the couples that ended up coming out of the pod portion of the show and just share my thoughts about them. I've covered 1,000 Pound Sisters. That's the only reality show I've really covered on my channel in the past. And when I did that, I would sit there and meticulously take notes and write down timestamps so I could include clips and stuff like that. And I didn't do any of that this time because I mostly was watching this for fun and or while I was on the treadmill at the gym. Okay? So this is just my thoughts from the shit I can remember. And, we don't have to agree on all of these points because I'm sure we won't. I feel pretty strongly we probably won't agree about everything. But that's why I love reality TV, because we all watch the same shit and we all have different opinions coming out of it. So I figure we can start with, like, the couples that are least interesting / I think most likely to actually get married at the end. And then we'll work our way towards the more interesting and, in my opinion, least likely to actually get married at the end of this show. And if we're gonna talk about the safest bets / least interesting people on the show, to me personally, we gotta start with two couples, actually. And I'm gonna talk about them because I think, like, for me, their storylines are kind of sort of the same. And those couples are Johnny and Amy and Kenneth and Brittany. Now, one, I just want to say, I think, like, their relationships, both of them seem pretty solid to me. It seems like they're the most normal people. They seem to have not a lot of drama, at least based on the stuff that was just seen in the pods. I would say if I had any concerns about either of these couples, that actually goes back to, for both of them, to them being interracial couples. And the couples both had conversations in the pods about how, for them, race didn't matter. It was essentially like these, like, colorblind conversations where it's like, I don't see color. Color doesn't matter to me. Race won't have any impact on how I feel about you as a person. And I think that obviously makes a lot of sense because you're on a show called Love is Blind where the purpose is that you don't care what the person looks like, whoever, whatever. And I also think to some extent they're being genuine in saying, like, I don't care that you're Black, Asian, whatever your race is, it doesn't matter to me. I think that makes sense as well. But I think the danger of that approach to their relationships, and I'm saying this, I guess I should preface, I'm saying this as a person who's in an interracial relationship myself. I am white and my partner is Filipino and Chinese. And so I'm saying this just, like, from my personal experience. But I think when you, like, say that race doesn't matter to you at all, like, that's not taking into account the full picture of what your relationship is going to look like. Like, the race that they're initially talking about in the pods is, like, attraction, right? Like, I will be attracted to you regardless of what your race is. That's one thing. But then race is just so much more than just being attracted to somebody. And it's something that impacts the way the world around you interacts with you, treats you, etc. And I think we all know that the actual real world is not like a pod dating show experiment. And so I think, like, they will have to tackle what that means for their relationship once they are in the world interacting with other folks. Just speaking from my own experience, I think as a white person myself, like, I have had to take some time to do the work to acknowledge that I've lived my life in a very different way than my partner has, and I think the white folks in these relationships will need to do the same. But I honestly also think that the people involved in these relationships have the capacity to do that. The only other thing about these two couples is specifically about Kenneth and Brittany, and it's like, I already told you, it's hard for me to really, really relate to a lot of these couples because, like, it could just never be me wanting to get married after 3 weeks of knowing somebody. But the other thing about these shows, or this couple in particular, sorry, let me correct myself. The other thing about this couple in particular is that they're like super religious and like God is a big part of the relationship. And I'm just like, I really don't resonate with that. Like, that is really not for me. Like, wish them all the best, but it's not for me, babes. So yeah, that's the safest bets. I think that both of those couples are going to be successful, at least as of right now with what I've seen on the show. Again, they just released 3 more episodes, and I haven't watched episode 6 yet, so I got 4 episodes to watch over the weekend before next week. So we'll see what is to come, but right now I'm feeling like they're pretty safe bets. I don't know. I'm sure if they're not, y'all are gonna let me know in the comments down below. The couple I feel most like could go either way about is with Jeremy and Laura. Now, Jeremy was a guy who was courting 2 women over his time in the pods. The other woman that he didn't end up picking was a woman named Sarah Ann. I'm honestly thrilled he didn't pick her because I got the weirdest, baddest vibes from her. I didn't really necessarily care for her. I don't know if I feel like she was there for the right reasons. And so I'm glad he didn't pick her. I don't have like really anything to back up why I feel that way. There was lots about her that just was not passing the vibe check for me personally, and so I'm glad he didn't pick her. I was rooting for Laura. And to me, Jeremy is objectively the most attractive person when you take into what he actually looks like and his personality. Like, I think that maybe on paper he's physically not the most attractive person. I mean, I think he is physically attractive, don't get me wrong. But I think there's probably other men on the show who are more physically attractive. But I'm just a sucker for a silly, goofy guy. And so Jeremy is like doing it for me. And I honestly initially thought that he and Laura were going to be a really good pair because in the pods, it seemed like both of them were on that silly, goofy energy. You know, like, I wouldn't be surprised if I went to the Silly Goose convention and saw them both there. But then the little short bit that we got in episode 5 of them being at like the resort, I was kind of like, Laura seems really over his goofiness. Like, Laura seems to be not about it. And I don't know, maybe it's just like one of those things where it's like, okay, maybe she thought there would be an off switch. Like, maybe she thought that there would be another side to him at some point. And maybe it's this like feeling of like, oh, he never turns this off. He's always a silly, goofy guy. But because of that, I'm just kind of worried that it's not going to work out because Laura seemed just kind of annoyed by him. So that's why I feel like I could go either way with Jeremy and Laura. Like, they could work out, they could maybe not work out. I'm curious to see what happens. I hope the best for them because initially, like I said, on paper, it seemed like they were a good fit for each other. I'm also really worried Sarah Ann is going to come back. Some part of me feels like they're going to find some way, because if you don't know, sometimes they do bring people from the pods back into these like little planned group parties and things like that. And I'm just really worried Miss Sarah Ann is going to like fuck it up. and I would just rather she not come back at all, to be honest with you. Because like I said, the vibes for me, off. Now, the last 2 couples, I should say, I think are where most of the drama and the internet chatter is at. Because everything on the internet that I've seen about this season of Love is Blind always goes back to these 2 couples. And so they're the most dramatic, the most interesting, and I also think probably both of them the least likely to actually go through with marriage at the end of this whole little experiment situation type of deal. The first couple surrounds a woman named AD. And AD in the pods had relationships with 2 different men. One was the man she ended up with named Clay, and the other was this wackadoo crazy guy. He's so crazy. I don't know what was going on with him, but his name was Matthew, and there is something off about this man, and I just do not understand where they found him or what's going on with him. Like, he's easily one of the weirdest dudes I've seen on the show. They do, I think, sometimes purposely cast some weirdo people, and sometimes those weirdo people do make it far into the show. I can think of, like, I told you all I just finished watching season 4 of Love is Blind, and there was a guy on there named Zach. Actually, Zach's gonna come up again because this whole situation a little bit reminds me of his situation in the pods. But anyways, like, Zach was, like, a little weird, a little quirky, but he also had the capacity to, like, also be a human. So I did not get that impression from Matthew. They showed him coming into the pods, and he had, like, a list of questions that he forced the women he was dating to ask him. He would be like, pick a number, and then he would ask them a question based on the number they picked. And he had really weird responses to almost every clip of this that they showed. Like, a lot of his responses seemed like he wasn't even really paying attention. A couple of responses, he just, like physically looked so bored and or verbalized that he was, like, bored by it or, like, not impressed by their answers. And then they also showed, like, the girls trying to ask him questions back, and he refused. He was like, I didn't know this was about you asking me questions. Like, I was like, fuck off, dude. Like, what is going on with you? What do you think this is? And so most of the women seem to be relatively, like, put off by him. And somehow he reeled in this woman, AD. And AD, I think the reason he was able to reel her in is because it seems like she was just so committed to giving every guy a chance and giving the experiment a chance, and, you know, also committed to trying to talk to guys that maybe she wouldn't normally talk to. And I think Matthew is easily a guy that most women wouldn't normally talk to. So if you're AD and you're, like, giving the experiment a real chance, like, full on trying to experience the idea of meeting somebody you wouldn't necessarily meet or approach outside of this experiment, then AD was the one. And I think that's how she got caught in his weirdo net. Now, what we don't realize, so they show us, you know, AD building this relationship with Matthew, and they kind of present it on the show like AD is the only woman that has shown any interest in Matthew, and she's building this relationship, and she's talking about how, like, sincere it is, and the connection is so deep in a way that, like, she hasn't ever had with people outside of the pods, outside of the dating show. And then we hear him do this, like, very, what I thought at the time to be sincere, like, monologue with her about, like, you know, like, he asks about her dad and then finds out that her dad passed away, and then he gives her this big speech about, like, well, you know, I really wouldn't want to push forward in this if I wasn't able to ask your dad for his permission to have your hand in marriage, and, like, that's how seriously I'm taking this, and, like, if necessary, like, I'd leave this experiment with you right now, today, in order to make things happen with you, and blah, 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 blah. You know, I don't need to relive or recreate his monologue. I'm not auditioning for anything, but if y'all are actors looking for a monologue, I guess maybe go hit up old Matthew from Love is Blind Season 6. Anyways, he does all of this. She's so touched by it. And then she walks out of the dating pods, goes back into, like, the general women's living quarters, and you hear this other woman named Amber, who, mind you, we've seen very little of. We haven't seen her really interacting with any man, let alone Matthew. And we hear her going on about all the things that Matthew just said to AD, except she's saying that Matthew just said all of those things to her, not knowing that AD just came from having that conversation with Matthew. So essentially, Matthew is telling both of these women the exact same things. And AD just heard it, so she's like, what the fuck? I am so fucked up. How did this happen? Like, I thought I was the only one he was saying this to. All of this comes to a head. she does share with Amber, like, hey girl, he said those exact same things to me, like, what the fuck? What the fuck? And Amber's like, Amber, who, again, we barely seen, she's like, well, I'm leaving. I'm just leaving the show, bye. And she leaves. We see her for all of 5 minutes when she had clearly had such an important impact on what happened with AD on this show. And anyways, another important thing to note is that AD has also been courting this other man named Clay, and at one point kind of gave Clay the impression that, like, she was having stronger feelings for this other man, okay? And then once, well, we could get into how Clay felt about all of that later, but, like, AD was really, I think, preparing to commit to Matthew, and then all of that ruined everything. And so what ends up happening is Matthew apparently had stronger feelings for Amber, although, again, we never saw it on the show. And so Matthew's like, well, if Amber's leaving, I gotta go get my girl. And he leaves the show, too. He leaves the show and just leaves AD in the dust. And I'm like, who the fuck is this man? Because I was, and maybe it's just the way that Netflix and the Love is Blind producers and editors presented it, but I was just like, y'all really had me believing he was really, really interested in AD. Like, I really thought that he was all in on her. So I was just shook and bewildered by that man. He was such an oddball, and I hope he finds peace, but not at the expense of other people like he was doing on this show. You know what I'm saying?
I'm also so mad at myself because tell me why I forgot about one of the most cringe things that he did, which was come and talk to AD and tell her that he's been thinking a lot about the situation and how he thinks America is probably going to see him as an underdog and is going to be rooting for him and they're going to be on his side. And I'm like, what the fuck are you even talking about, my dude? What do you mean? Like, what are you here for? What do you think is happening here? Also, America does not like him.
So anyways, that brings us to Clay, the other man that AD was talking to and does eventually get engaged to. And honestly, he is just full of red flags. Like, I think the biggest red flag for me is that he right off the bat in one of the early dates that he had with AD was like, you gotta tell me what you look like because I can't commit to marrying you if I don't think you're physically attractive. And AD was like, well, that's the fucking point of the show. Like, do you know what show you're on? Come to find out later, he does say that he had never watched the show before coming on it, which I think is maybe a little bit of an interesting choice. Because, like, wouldn't you want to know what you were getting yourself into? I don't know. I'm sure he was, like, recruited by casting producers and things like that. But I was just like, why would you sign up for the show having never watched it? I mean, obviously the people in the very first season had never watched it, never knew what they were getting into. But at this point, we're 6 seasons in. So even if you had never watched it before you got, like, selected to be on it, I would think you would at least go watch one episode, one season, but whatever. The red flag there is not that he didn't watch the show. The red flag is just that, like, you signed up to be in this experiment and yet you still want to know what she looks like. Like, to me, if I am AD, I'm like, you're not gonna love me if I'm ugly, and that's not the point of why we're here. And just to be clear, AD is a gorgeous woman, so, like, there really was no fear. And they very rarely actually cast women or men on this show who aren't at least somewhat attractive. I guess we'll continue to talk more about that in a minute when we get to the last couple. But, like, AD's beautiful, and he was so silly to be sitting there thinking about not continuing his relationship because she couldn't tell him what she looked like. Now, the other big red flag for me is just, like, how insecure he got whenever AD informed him that his competition was Matthew. Like, on one hand, I can understand that he might be, like, he obviously has interacted with Matthew in person in real life, and he probably for sure knows that Matthew is wackadoodle, and I'm sure that is a bit jarring to be like, oh my God, what does she see in this man? Because she also sees something in me, and I don't identify with that man in any kind of way. But I'm also just like, if you really think you're some great catch and or that you're a better catch for her than Matthew is, then why are you acting insecure? I don't know. There's just like one of the least attractive things to me when it comes to a person I want to date or be in a relationship with is somebody who's not confident in themselves. Like, if you're showing me that you're worried that old Matthew is going to have a better chance at me than you, then I don't know that I want a chance with either of you, to be honest. The one thing I do want to say, though, is that I think it would be reasonable if he's like, I don't know if I can trust your judgment when it comes to, like, the character of men or the type of men you're interested in. This goes back to Zach from Love is Blind Season 4. He was dating two women named Bliss and Irina. And Irina, like us, those of us who were watching, we all could see Irina was also not a great person, not a good fit for him. And at one point, Bliss, once she finds out that Irina is like the other option, Bliss is like, I really have to question your judgment because like what I know about you does not fit with what I know about her. And I feel like that is probably a big part of where Clay is coming from, because there's a disconnect there, you know? And then I think just some like smaller red flags about Clay is just that he seems to be a very big work in progress. And like, it is one thing that he's self-aware about that and that he can communicate that to AD, but I just feel like he's not mature enough for AD. Like, AD seems to be really established with where she's at in life, what she wants moving forward in life, and things like that. Like, she has a lot of emotional maturity, and I don't see that from Clay in the same kind of way. And I also think it's like a concern because AD herself has said that she has a bad history of dating men that need to be fixed, that are works in progress, and she's not really there to fix people anymore. And so that is also like, if we're talking about like the long-term success of the relationship, like I just don't see that happening because I don't think that he's like secure enough in himself to be able to give AD the things that she wants and needs. But I will say, just in general, when it comes to AD, I love her so much. I really do think she's emotionally and mentally very mature. And cognizant of herself and her needs. But when it comes to her judgment in men, might be time to pack that up, bestie, because based on what we've seen thus far, I don't know. I don't know if you should trust your judgment in men. It's just not there for me. They end up clearly having some sexual chemistry, but I don't know that that's enough for them to make it last in this relationship, in this engagement, in this potential marriage. So yeah, that's AD and Clay. I don't personally foresee it being super successful, but I am willing to be convinced. Now the couple that I think has the least chance of succeeding and is also, in my opinion, the messiest and probably the most talked about on the internet is Jimmy and Chelsea, which also means we got to talk about Jessica and Trevor, who they each respectively dated on the show in the pods before they picked each other. So Jimmy is the like most milquetoast, boring ass looking man on the show. He does nothing for me. His personality is bland as hell. His looks are just fine. I mean, he's not an ugly guy. Like I said, they rarely cast people who aren't in some way attractive, you know? He's maybe not personally my type, but he's just bland. He doesn't bring a lot to the party. And anyways, he's dating two people in the pods. One is Chelsea, who he does end up picking to be engaged to. And the other is a woman named Jessica. And Jessica's thing is that she has a daughter, I think a 10-year-old daughter. She had her daughter when she was very young. I think she said 17. And Jessica's just like a very direct woman. She knows what she wants. She's very confident. And I will say that I think that that is in very much opposition with who Jimmy is as a person, because he lacks confidence. He sucks at decision making. He is not assertive, does not stand up for himself, does not speak up for himself. And it's wild because I think he's intimidated by Jessica because he is insecure about his ability to do all of those things. And so having Jessica present when she is just so sure of what she wants and what she needs and is able to communicate that, I think that that's really jarring for him. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why he didn't end up picking her. I think the other reason is that when she revealed to him that she had a kid, that was like a major deal breaker for him. And that I think is unfortunate because I think it's clear that she is looking for somebody who would be supportive of that. And I personally, I don't want kids myself at all, but I had always said that if I had a partner who already had a kid, or if I had a partner who really wanted kids, like if I loved that person enough, that would be something that I would be happy to take on as a part of dating them. And it's just clear that Jimmy is not in that situation. And I wish he would have just been more upfront about that from the beginning, because you could tell from the second Jessica shared that information with him that that was a deal breaker for him. And for me, it's kind of shitty that he like led her on past that. So the other person he's dating is Chelsea. And honestly, I don't have many qualms with Chelsea, but it seems like people on the internet do. And I think this is maybe the part of the video where some people will disagree with me about my feelings about the show. The one thing though that I do take issue with is that she picked fucking Jimmy over Trevor. And Trevor, and maybe that's because, again, I do like a little bit of like a goofy guy, a silly goofy guy. And Trevor does give a little silly goofy guy vibes. He's got a mullet, but he's like real buff and ripped. And he's just like got a fun, easygoing personality. He seemed literally just like so sweet. Like I feel like in terms of like straight men, he seemed to be just like a really sweet guy. And so it's wild to me that at the end of the day, Chelsea ended up picking somebody so boring, such as Jimmy, over Trevor. like I will give it to her. She had no idea what either of them looked like. So like comparing Trevor to Jimmy's looks like not fair. Not fair. Just like it's not going to be fair for us to compare Jessica's looks to Chelsea's looks. Just personality-wise, just like what we even saw in the show. Like Trevor is easily the catch. Trevor is easily the best pick. And you could even, like, in my opinion, you could even tell in the ways that she interacted with him. She seemed to be enjoying herself so much more when she was interacting with Trevor as opposed to Jimmy. So I just am so confused why she didn't go with Trevor over Jimmy. Like, I would need to probably hear her, like, elaborate further on that decision making, because it doesn't make sense to me. Now, going specifically to the relationship between Jimmy and Chelsea, what we need to discuss, first of all, I think the biggest elephant in the room is that there is a part of their dating experience where they have a conversation about celebrities that people think they look like. And I do think that Chelsea is the one that starts the conversation. She says, what celebrities do you get told that you look like? And allegedly, I read an article on the internet that was recommended to me when I was scrolling Facebook of all places. So I can't speak to the validity of said article. It was from some source I didn't recognize, so I don't know how real it was or not. But according to that article, allegedly, Jimmy did have an answer, and Jimmy also didn't look like the thing that he answered. But the show itself doesn't show Jimmy answering it. He kind of like, if I remember correctly, kind of acts like he doesn't ever get mistaken for a celebrity, or you'd have to think about it or something like that. And then he turns the question back to Chelsea. And Chelsea says, okay, and I think this is important. This is an important part of this conversation because people are so mad that she told him that she looked like somebody that the internet collectively doesn't think she looks like. She said, because she's a flight attendant, okay? She said, when I'm on flights, I've had a number of people tell me that I look like Megan Fox, but I don't agree with it. Like, I don't get excited. I think it's just because I have light eyes and dark hair. Like, I don't think I look like Megan Fox. All right? She said that. Now, I think people forget about it because later, when they actually meet, Jimmy expresses his disappointment that she doesn't look like Megan Fox, and he says, she told me she looked like Megan Fox, which is not exactly what she said, or not exactly how it went down. So I do take qualms with people getting mad that Chelsea gave a false impression of what she looked like, because it's like, well, she didn't really. She said other people have said that and that she didn't agree with it, all right? So I don't think she was ever trying to claim that she does look like Megan Fox, and that's not what the question was about. The question was not about what she thinks she looks like, just what other people think. So, now, we can take qualms with, like, why are they even discussing that to begin with? I think if you're really going to do this, like, silly dating show, you really need to lean into the experience and stop, like, trying to find out what the other person looks like. But you know what? The question was asked. That's what happened. I do also, though, think that the problem also here is Jimmy and not Chelsea or Jessica, because from that moment, it felt like Jimmy's opinion shifted. And I feel like that's when Jimmy shifted to Chelsea, because I think that a lot of his priorities are based in looks, which is fascinating because, you know, like, of all the men on the show, or at least even if you want to talk about just even the 5 men that made it to the next, like, stage of the show, he's, like, easily one of the least attractive to me, okay? So, like, why he's on some kind of high horse to be like, I deserve the most beautiful woman or something like that. He didn't say that. I'm putting words in his mouth now. But, like, why he thinks that he's in a place to be like, oh, this isn't what I expected, or whoever, whatever, it's just wild to me. And, I mean, the reality is like, you know, if that is what he's interested in, and I think a lot of people are fascinated to know, like, what his response is when he finally sees what Jessica does look like. Like, Jessica is a bombshell, and that's not to take away from Chelsea. Like, I do think Chelsea's a beautiful woman, but Jessica's, like, a bombshell when it comes to, like, conventional, like, beauty and what the world finds conventionally attractive, right? I just imagine that he's really kicking himself in the ass. But I ultimately feel like Jessica would not have been happy in that relationship. Like, she needs a man who can either, like, match her in her directness and her decision-making skills and her confidence, or she needs a man that's going to be just okay with her taking directive and being the decision maker and doing all of that. And I don't think that Jimmy is either of those things. So I don't think she would have been happy. And I also think it's probably best that we didn't involve Jessica's kid in the mess that is Jimmy, or really probably the mess that is any of these men, you know? I don't know. I'm not a parent, so I can't speak to it, but I would imagine if I was a parent, I would probably be so hesitant to go on a show like this, because if I was ever going to introduce, like, a new partner to a child that was mine, I would want to really put in time to make sure that that person was a good person before I introduced them into my kid's life, you know? You feel me? But I don't know, can't relate otherwise. I don't have kids, probably won't ever have kids, also not straight. But anyways, Jimmy and Chelsea, everything they showed of their time together, from, like, when they first meet each other in person all the way to, like, their time in the resort in the Dominican Republic, is just so awkward. It's just so uncomfortable. It's clear that Jimmy, you can just read on his face, read through his body language, and even some of the things he said just, like, really suggest that he is very disappointed in her looks. That is not what he expected her to look like, and I don't think it's gonna last. If there was one relationship that I felt like fairly confident wasn't gonna make it, it would be this one. This would be the one that I would pick, to be quite honest with you. So that's my guess for for what is in store for them moving forward. And you know, I think that the whole drama and their little like love square, is that what you call it when there's 4 people? I think the beauty of this show is exhibited in their relationship specifically, because you get to watch in real time them making bad decisions for themselves, and you as an audience member know it's a bad decision, but they don't. Like, we know that Jimmy is very focused on looks, and he's sitting here talking to this bombshell of a woman named Jessica who is like so ready to be down for him, has been so sincere and heartfelt with him. And you just see him making just horrible choices when it comes to her. And that's the beauty of Love is Blind. That's what I love about it so much. I really prefer the pod portion of the show. I feel like once they go and start living together afterwards, it starts to drag on a little bit. So hopefully my interest will still be here once I get through the next 4 episodes that are available. But we'll see. Anyways, I think that's all I got. I think that's all I got about the show so far. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are down below. Did you like this video? Did you like my comments? Do you agree with me? Do you want to see more Love is Blind content from me? I mean, I honestly wouldn't go back and like retroactively talk about the other seasons, but like, do you want me to share my opinions on the next 4 episodes once I watch them? I don't know. You let me know. You let me know down below in the comments. Otherwise, that's all I have for today. So if you're brand new here, make sure to subscribe down below. Hit the bell button so you get a notification every single time I post a new video. Make sure to leave me a comment, hit like, click share, and follow me on all my social media. I love you all so, so much, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!